Good morning, church. I want to echo what Scott said just a moment ago, and what Steve said. This is a really important weekend, and we are, in many ways, thinking of and remembering those who have gone before us. And I appreciate the moment of silence. I think that's really important, to have time to pause. It's in those moments of reflection and silence that I think we really learn to be grateful for the things that we have. So thank you for leading us in a moment of silence. So if you are new here, my name is Phil Brookman, and today I'm starting a new series called Home Improvement, and I'll get into that in just a moment. If you think about home, you will spend more time at home than any other place in your entire life. Now, home changes from one season to another. So you have a childhood home, maybe you have a neighborhood home, you have an apartment home, maybe you have a vacation home, a suburban home. I even got a letter this week from a guy that used to live in this city, and he had a season of life where he was homeless. So his home for a while was actually the alley behind Hobby Lobby. So it's pretty different. So your home is going to change depending on what season of life you're in, but overall, you will spend more time at home than in any other place in life. You'll spend more time at home than your workplace. You'll spend more time at home than you will at church. You'll spend more time at home than you will hanging out with friends. The Census Bureau a few years ago put out some stats on what we do with our time. And one, they told us that the average American works 44 hours a week. And they also tell us that you will spend between 15 and 20 hours just running errands, going to the store, going to church, going to this party, going to this event. And so if you put those together and then subtract that from the 168 hours we get per week, then that means that generally speaking, roughly, you're going to have 100 hours every week, and you're going to be at home. Now, if you project that out for the course of your life, then that means that if you live to the average life expectancy these days, then you will spend 40 to 50 years at home. Now, that means a lot of things. Well, one thing that means, on a positive side of things, is that this creates a wonderful opportunity for lots of really, really good memories to be made. So, for example, I read this story just recently about this couple from Utah, Ben and Jackie, and Ben's parents had given him season football tickets for his favorite team, and he couldn't afford it. And so he and Jackie, over the course of several months, started saving up enough money to pay back his parents. Well, after they had saved up quite a bit of money, they were going to give this money to his parents. And Jackie started looking for the envelope that they had kept the money in, and she couldn't find the envelope anywhere, and she turned the house upside down, was looking in cabinets and pulling out drawers, could not find the money. Jackie has a toddler, and Jackie has a paper shredder. And so she starts putting things together, and she goes and she looks in the paper shredder, and she sees something she will never forget. $1,000 cut into 1,000 pieces. But that's just home. That's just home for you. It's where we make our memories. You've got stories like that too. You probably remember, for those of you who are parents, you remember the first steps that your toddler ever took. That was probably at home. You might remember as a teenager, maybe the very first time that you sat on a couch next to someone that you had a crush on, and you held her hand or you held his hand while you watched that movie. That probably happened at home. Home memory, just. So now my wife and kids have gone to Inside Out camp, so I am just at home right now with a snake, like somewhere in my house. But that's home. Like, we all have these memories. We have so much time that we get to spend at home. But here's something, regardless of what your home is right now, regardless of what it's been in the past or what it's been in the future, here is something that will always be true of home. The culture of your home will determine the quality of your life. And so if your home is full of a good, vibrant, wonderful culture, then that's going to resonate with you and that will shape you. But if your home life is destructive, and if it's tense, and if there's a lot of anxiety going on at home, that's going to affect the quality of your whole life. Think about the educational system for a moment. When a young person at school starts misbehaving, what do teachers and administrators often assume is going on? They will assume, well, there must be something wrong in the home life. This child must have a difficult home life. There must be stress, there must be anxiety, maybe there's abuse or neglect at home. And they're not right every time, but oftentimes those assumptions hold true. The culture of your home will affect the quality of your life. It's just math. If you're spending 100 hours at home, well, that really will start to change you and affect you and shape you over time. Now, am I saying that you can't overcome a negative home? No, I'm not saying that. Through the power of the Spirit, the power of the Word, the power of the Lord, we can overcome a negative home life. All I'm saying is that this force is extremely powerful. Who you are, in many ways, is determined by your home life, your character, your resilience, your confidence, or your lack thereof is all shaped by your home life. But for the most part of the world, and all the people at work, and you smile, they've been there for, and then we get, don't say you're going to do something if you actually don't plan on doing it. Don't declare what you're not going to deliver. In fact, I want everybody to say this with me, the whole screen. Follow through. Do not declare what you cannot deliver. Let's say it again. Follow through. Do not declare what you cannot deliver. This applies in so many areas of life. First of all, this idea of follow through, it does apply to one's relationship with Jesus. I remember years ago I was talking to a teenager and she was thinking about getting baptized. And she said, you know, Phil, I really want to follow Christ. I really want to give my life to Christ. I want to confess my sins. I want to believe in Him. I want to get baptized. But I'm not going to do that. And I said, why? Why would you not do that? And she was really honest with me. She said, because I'm not ready to give up the life I'm leading. I know that if I commit to following Jesus, I'm going to have to stop doing X, Y, and Z, and I'm not ready to do that. And so I'm not going to get baptized today. Now, I disagree with her lifestyle, but I really resonate with her honesty. She gets it, that when she declares that she's going to follow Christ, she's willing to back it up. You got to apply this to your relationship with Christ. I'll give you another area of life you should apply this principle to. I think you should apply this principle to your singing and your worship. We just sang a song in which one of the lyrics says, Lord, I offer my life to you. Wow. Like that's a pretty audacious thing to say, to sing. Well, how many of us, Sunday after Sunday, we sing these songs, we don't really think about what we're singing. Only declare what you plan to deliver. I'll give you another area of life. I want to camp out on this one for just a moment. We've got to apply this principle. Speaking of home, we've got to start applying this principle to our parenting. Parents, we must learn to follow through. This is especially true when it comes to discipline. I remember when my kids were really young, I got into the really bad habit of making empty threats. And so it went something like this. Kid would misbehave, and I would say, if you do that one more time, I'm going to send you to your room. And then they would do it again. And I'd say, well, if you do that one more time, if you say no one more time, if you knock your milk bottle off the high chair one more time. But the only problem is I kept saying one more time, but I probably said it 20 times. That's called an empty threat. And what I have learned is that children, they might not know a whole lot. When they're young, they don't know their ABCs, they can't feed themselves. But one thing that kids learn very quickly is children know their parents. And a child knows that if the parent doesn't follow through, the child's not going to listen to that parent. So if you don't follow through, your kids won't listen to you. Parents, if you don't follow through, your children, they will stop listening to you. And so if you want to make a change, parents, and immediately see results, here's what you do. Less talking, more doing. Don't declare, what you can't deliver. Think about getting pulled over. What's more effective, a ticket or a warning? Well, a ticket, of course. When you get a ticket by the police officer, that hurts. Because then you have to go pay that, and that's $100 or that's $200 out of your bank account. For some of you, that's like $500, depending on how much you were speeding, out of your bank account. Well, that doesn't feel good. But when you get pulled over and the officer comes to your window and says, well, I'm going to give you a warning today, on the outside you smile and say, oh, I really appreciate that, officer. But on the inside you're going, yes, I won. And you don't listen to what the officer says, even if he gives you a stern lecture. You don't care. It's just yada, 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 yada. In your mind, you're thinking, I won. I'm not going to change my driving habits. I just beat the system. I'm going to take my warning and move on. Do you think your kids are any different than you? Of course not. Do not declare what you cannot deliver. When it comes to discipline, parents, we have got to learn to follow through. So I'll get really practical here. Jim Fay is a parenting expert. And early on, when I had my really bad habits going on about all these empty threats, I read something he said and I applied it to my parenting early on. So parents, listen to this because you can apply this at any life stage. Jim Fay says you need to start using enforceable statements. An enforceable statement is something you can say to a child that you can absolutely enforce. So I'll give you some examples here. So here's an example of something that is not an enforceable statement, and I find myself actually still saying this every once in a while. We're trying to leave, go somewhere, and I'll say something like, would you just stop piddling around? Would you get your backpack, get your shoes, come on, hurry up. How many times do I have to tell you? Get in the car. That is not an enforceable statement. Here's what is an enforceable statement. The car will leave at 8 o'clock. That's it. That's all you say. Now, to make it enforceable, what do you have to do at 8 o'clock? You got to leave, whether or not your child's in the car. So I read this from Jim Fay, and in the last few years, I've told this story, so I'll make it very brief. But so one of my big problems used to be that when I was at the park with my girls, we couldn't leave. Like I kept telling them, we got to leave, girls. We got to go, and they would not listen to me. So finally, one day, they're on the swings, and I just walk up, and I say, girls, I'm leaving. And I turned around, and I got in my car, and I left. Just drove away. I know, I'm a terrible father. Both my girls started running up the sidewalk screaming, Daddy, you've left us. Let me tell you, from that day forward, when I say, girls, I'm leaving, guess what they think? They know Daddy is leaving because it was an enforceable statement. I had control over whether or not I left in that car. Here's another one. Maybe parents, you found yourself saying something like this. This room's a disaster. How many times have I told you to clean your room? I can't even walk through your room. What is going on? Why won't you clean your room? That's called a rant. That is not an enforceable statement. Here's an enforceable statement. You are welcome to keep the toys that you pick up, and I am going to keep the toys or clothes that I pick up. That's an enforceable statement. Now, you have to follow through, but that's an enforceable statement. Maybe for you parents, it's about curfew, or maybe it's about them using the car. Maybe they get home at 11:30 and you say, I told you to be home at 11, and you didn't even call, and you didn't even text, and you're not even paying for your car. What are you doing? Well, that's not an enforceable statement. An enforceable statement might be, first of all, you're welcome to sleep here if you get here by 11. Just lock the doors. Or another one might be, I'll provide the car to those who have made a deposit equal to the insurance deductible. That's an enforceable statement. Say what you mean and mean what you say. Now, let me flip this for a little bit. Kids in the room, this elementary, middle school, high school, even college if you're still living at home. Listen up for just a minute if you've been tuning me out. Kids, this principle, follow through, do not declare what you cannot deliver, it applies to you too. If you tell your mom or dad that you're going to be in a certain place at a certain time, be there. If you tell your mom or your dad that you're going to clean your room, clean it. And here's why. If you don't follow through with your parents, then your parents won't trust you. So if you say, Mom, I'm going to clean the room after I spend time at so-and-so's house, and then you don't do it. Or if you say, Mom, I'm definitely going to clean my room. I just need to finish this TV show first, and then you don't do it. If you don't follow through, then you tell your parents that you cannot be trusted. And kids, let me tell you, there's a day coming when you're going to want to ask your parents something a little bit bigger. Maybe you're going to want to ask your parents, hey, can I go to this concert with so-and-so? Hey, my friends are taking this trip to such and such place. Can I go? And if you haven't developed this trust with your parents, they're going to say no. So kids, you've got to learn to follow through with your parents. You can apply this to marriage. I won't talk about that this week, but you can also apply this to friendship. Here's the last area of life I want to apply this to. So the main point is, follow through. Do not declare what you cannot deliver. You can apply this all over life, but when it specifically comes to your friendships, I want to give you something really specific to do with your friends. I want you to eliminate a phrase from your vocabulary for 1 month. It's an experiment. Here's the phrase that I want you to eliminate. Let's get together sometime. Don't say it. Here's why I don't want you to say it. Because it's a lie. It's a lie. Based on the prestigious Phil Brookman Research Institute, that promise is only delivered about 20% of the time. Think about how many times you've said that. Hey, we should get lunch together sometime soon. We should hang out. And I get it, like you're saying it because you care about the person, you like the person, but you never follow through. And so for 1 month, don't say that. Instead, say something like, would you like to go to Starbucks at 3 o'clock on Thursday? Or, hey, McAllister's noon Friday. Or June 2nd, would you like to come over to my house for dinner? Or June 15th, hey, would you like to take a walk together? Get specific about your relational investment. Because what happens over time is if you never really mean what you say, then you don't get a lot of things done. Let me talk about finances for a minute, because there's a good metaphor here. Financially speaking, if you are pretty diligent with your money and you pay off your debt, you budget, you know what money's coming in, what money's going out. If you do that, number one, it is hard to do that, but in the long run, the people that are diligent with their finances end up being more generous than anybody else. In other words, you make more of a difference financially because you were diligent in the way that you budgeted. That exact principle can be applied to your calendar. Now, don't hear me saying that like this is the most important thing in the world. Organization is important, but it is not a fruit of the Spirit, so we don't want to go crazy on this one. However, I do think scheduling is a discipline. It's a discipline that when we practice it, we end up blessing a lot more people. The more diligent you are with your time, the more difference you actually make with your life. Planning leads to blessing. And so let's be the people that don't say, hey, we should get together sometime. Let's be the people that declare what we can deliver with our friends, and let's get it on the calendar. So flip this around for a minute. Imagine that you never applied this sermon, that you never followed through, that you just said things with no intention of actually doing them, like the man from the story that Jesus told. What would your life really be like? Well, for one, I can tell you that all your friends, or many of your friends and your family, they will start thinking of you as a flighty person. They'll start thinking of you as the one that always has a big talk but can never follow through. And what happens is nobody will count on you. If you don't follow through, nobody will count on you. And so you'll just live your life, and everybody's going to think you're a flighty person, and then you're going to die someday, and you're going to have a funeral, and people are going to come to your funeral, and do you really want to be remembered as a flighty person? Do you really want to be remembered as someone who would make one commitment here, but then something better came up over here, and so you ditched your first commitment to go to the second commitment? Do you really want to be known for that? You see, flighty people frustrate people. And so don't be known for that. What you really want to be known for is that person that was so honest and so loyal and so committed that whatever they said, they did it. You want to be known as a person that followed through. So, this week, I want you to follow through on something that you've been meaning to do for a long time. Maybe it's a conversation you're supposed to have, or maybe it's about fitness or diet. Just follow through on something that you've always planned to do. And I promise you, there's going to come a moment where you're going to have this critical decision like, do I make this call or not? Do I go to this program or not? And when it gets hard, because follow through is always hard. When it gets hard, I want you to remember two things. There's actually two names. When follow through gets hard, the first name I want you to remember is Francis, as in a guy named Clifton Francis. This guy is from India, and a few years ago, he's at a friend's house, and his friend asked him if he would go see the World Cup. And Clifton Francis said two very simple words. He said, "Of course." Now, Clifton is a man of his word. And so after he committed to going to the World Cup, he felt compelled to follow through. He was pretty poor. He had a job as a teacher, didn't make a lot of money, could not afford a plane ticket, could not afford gas to drive there. And so what Clifton did is he got on his bike and he rode from the capital of Iran to Moscow, 2,600 miles. Now, do I question his sanity? Absolutely. The guy's a nut. Would I want him as my friend? No, that's a little weird. That's just a little too much for me. However, I can't question the guy's commitment. He knows how to follow through. So if you find yourself this week struggling, like, I don't think I can follow through with this discipline with my child. I don't think I can follow through with this commitment I made with such and such person. Think Francis. The second person I want you to think of when you're struggling is I want you to think Jesus. So Jesus, towards the end of his life, he started telling people he was about to die. So he would pull his disciples aside and say, guys, I'm going to Jerusalem. I'm going to suffer. I'm going to die. And his disciples, if you remember, they're not having it. In fact, one time Peter comes up to Jesus and he's like, no, it's not going to happen. Never, Lord. He actually says, never, Lord, this shall never happen to you. And this is, by the way, this is exactly what you'd want your friend to do. You want the friend that's going to get with you in the middle of this mess and say, I'm going to stay with you. I'm going to be loyal. We're going to beat this together. Like Peter is being the best friend he could possibly be, saying, you're not going to die, Jesus. I'm not going to let it happen. Do you remember what Jesus said back to Peter? He said, get behind me what? Get behind me. He said, get behind me, Satan. See, Jesus recognized that was actually the voice of the enemy. And the voice of the enemy was saying, you should just settle. You should take the easy life over the hard death. You shouldn't do this. It's going to be really, really hard. You shouldn't follow through. But Jesus told that voice to be quiet because Jesus knew he'd given his word. And Jesus followed through. See, Jesus would only declare something if Jesus had planned on delivering it. And then the rest is history. That the kingdom is launched. Jesus dies on the cross. He saves humanity from their sins. He gives us the possibility of eternity with him. All that happens because Jesus followed through. If Jesus hadn't followed through, you'd be lost. I'd be lost. The world would be doomed. So when you are at that moment, I don't know if I can follow through. You think about what Jesus did for you. Some of you need to follow through today. Like some of you have actually been playing a mind game with God, and you've been saying in your head things like, you know what, God, someday I'm actually going to repair this relationship with so-and-so. Someday I'm going to give her a call, and I'm going to make this all right. Or maybe in your head you've been saying, you know, God, I've been struggling with this secret sin for such a long time, but someday I'm actually going to get this sin into the light so that people can help me along with my spiritual journey. I'm just waiting for the right moment. Or maybe it's like, you know, someday, Jesus, I think I am going to get baptized. I'm going to give my life to you, but you know what? I'm just not sure when that's going to come. So I'm just going to wait around, and someday when the right moment is there, then it'll happen. Let me just tell you, if you're thinking anything close to any of those thoughts, someday I'm going to do this, someday I'm going to do that, it's not going to happen. You're going to wait your whole life for the someday to come, and it's not going to happen because we don't just stumble into those moments. We make them. And so if you've been playing this mind game with God that, you know what, God, someday I'm going to do this or that, it's on you. You make the moment happen by following through. Do not declare what you cannot deliver. And so we're about to sing this song. And if you've got some follow through to do right now, then you can come tell me about whatever's going on in your life, and we'll help you today, we'll bless you today, we'll pray for you today. Let's stand and let's worship.